That night, the only one who shouted was the one who got blamed. The fog that blanketed Brooklyn seemed to swallow the streetlights whole. On 87th Street, only a few stray dogs and a lone cab heading home from a night shift remained. When the NYPD patrol unit arrived in response to a report of a suspicious black man, the neighborhood was dead silent. Silence. Just before the storm. There were 3 white officers on the team. The fourth was Lieutenant Malcolm Reese, 38 years old. Short hair, a beard, and dressed in a white shirt, the black officer began his shift with the same focus as always. But when they reached the scene, all they found was a breathless, unarmed young man standing alone. "Show me your ID," one officer barked. Before the man could respond, someone shoved him to the ground. Malcolm stepped forward. "That's enough. He can't breathe. Back off." But one officer drove his knee into the man's back. Another clamped plastic cuffs around his wrists so tightly it looked like they'd snap bone. The young man's eyes locked with Malcolm's, his voice fading. "Please. I'm innocent." Malcolm reached for his radio. "Code 302. Immediate medical support." No response, only a grunt from one of the officers. "He's just putting on a show. They always do." The young man's head slumped to the side. His lips moved, but no words came. When the police van drove away, Malcolm stayed frozen at the scene, eyes fixed on the distance. The sky was clear that night, but something had gone dark. By morning, the city had woken to a chilling headline. Another death in police custody. Another black man, dead. Another official statement. He resisted. But this time, something was different. One of the officers on the scene was black. His name, Malcolm Reese. Summoned to internal affairs, Malcolm had no idea what was waiting for him. Across the desk, the investigator eyed him with a smirk. "Isn't it odd? All 4 body cams magically malfunctioned at the same time. Funny how we never heard your voice in that story, Lieutenant Reese. I called for help. I shouted to stop it. He couldn't breathe." "Is that so? No footage. No witnesses. No audio." Another officer chimed in. "If you just stood there and watched, you're no different from them." There was no anger in Malcolm's eyes, only exhaustion. "You glorify the ones who stay silent, and you crucify the ones who speak up." Meanwhile, in the precinct cafeteria, the whispers had begun. "Made lieutenant, but he was never one of us. Says he spoke up. Who heard it? He stayed quiet, just like the rest of them." But Malcolm knew he hadn't. He remembered pressing the radio button. He remembered the emergency code. He remembered yelling for help. What he didn't have was proof. Or maybe, just maybe, he did. A forgotten frequency, a buried recording, a whisper caught in the static, and Malcolm was determined to find it. Footage can be erased, but sound never truly goes silent. Malcolm Reese was now officially suspended. His uniform hung in his locker, badge tucked in a drawer, and his voice pushed to the margins of the system. Most at the precinct had turned their backs on him. But Malcolm hadn't given up. Not yet. There were only 3 days left until his court hearing. He kept repeating to himself, "I called for help." I shouted, "They're trying to silence me." Then he remembered. Yes, the body cams had gone dark. But he'd used the radio that night, and every NYPD radio transmission was automatically archived. The problem? That archive could only be accessed by authorized personnel, and Malcolm was no longer one of them. But there was still someone inside who believed in him. His old patrol partner, Jalen, now a tech in the comms department. During the night shift, Malcolm quietly descended to the archive floor. Jalen met him at the secure door, pressed his thumb against the scanner, and stared Malcolm dead in the eye. "If there's anything in there, find it now. If not, this whole thing will bury you." Malcolm scanned through the logs. 2:11 a.m. Corrupted. 2:12. Corrupted. 2:13. Click. It opened. A crackled but clear voice echoed from the speakers. "Officer 456. There's excessive force here. I need medical backup. I repeat, he can't breathe." Then another voice, cold, dismissive. "Relax, Reese. Guys like him always pull this act. He's faking it." Malcolm's hands trembled. His eyes welled up. Jalen looked down silently. "This recording, it might just save your life." Malcolm copied the file, loaded it onto a USB, and in that moment, he understood. Yes, the truth had been muted, but it hadn't been erased, because some voices were born to echo. Even if truth doesn't speak, someone always hears it. The courtroom was packed. One side burned with anger, the other seemed unsure. But everyone's eyes were fixed on the lone figure in the defendant's seat, Malcolm Reese. He wore a clean gray suit, no longer bore the NYPD badge, but still stood with the posture of a man who'd once worn it with pride. Judge Penelope Clark adjusted her robe and addressed the room in a voice both calm and commanding. Lieutenant Malcolm Reese is charged with passive complicity resulting in death. Prosecution, please proceed. The prosecutor stepped forward, reciting his prepared lines with performative gravity. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, a man lost his life where the defendant was present. The body cams failed. There were no eyewitnesses, and Lieutenant Reese made no physical effort to stop his fellow officers. Some jury members nodded. Silence returned like a blanket over the room. Then Malcolm's defense attorney stood up, holding a small black USB stick. "Your Honor," he said, "we have new audio evidence, a recording of the police radio from the night in question. It proves my client did not remain silent. He tried to save that man." A ripple of murmurs moved through the courtroom. The prosecutor opened his mouth to object, but Judge Clark struck her gavel. "Play it." A waveform flickered on the courtroom screen. Then, sound. Malcolm's voice. "Officer 456, excessive force is being used. We need medical assistance. He can't breathe." Another officer. "Calm down, Reese. Guys like him always fake it. He's just putting on a show." Time seemed to freeze. The prosecutor turned pale. Some jurors set down their pens. Others lowered their eyes. Judge Clark removed her glasses, took a long breath. Malcolm closed his eyes. He'd finally been heard. And for the viewers watching, one thing became crystal clear. There had been someone crying out that night, and the system that tried to silence him was finally falling quiet. Truth can be silenced, but never erased. Judge Penelope Clark stood from her bench. The courtroom was silent, but not in fear. This was the weight of truth settling into the room. She turned to the jury. They were ready. She reached for her gavel and spoke. "In the case of Lieutenant Malcolm Reese, the jury has reached a unanimous decision." Malcolm lowered his gaze. His lips trembled. His entire future now hung on a single sentence. "The defendant is found not guilty on all charges." There were no cheers. But among the jury, a few looked at Malcolm, not with judgment, but with something resembling an apology. The prosecutor bowed his head. Judge Clark adjusted her robe once more and added, "Additionally, an internal investigation has been opened into the officers at the scene for intentionally disabling body cams and making racially charged remarks." In that moment, Malcolm's eyes welled up. Justice had arrived late, but it had arrived. His lawyer leaned over and whispered, "Your voice is on the record now. You don't have to stay quiet anymore." As Malcolm exited the courtroom, reporters rushed toward him. Microphones and questions flew in his face. But he only said one thing. "I couldn't save a life that night, but maybe, just maybe, I awakened a few consciences today." And he kept walking, because sometimes a single frequency is all it takes to bring down a wall.